Okay, we come to Act 1, Scene 2 of Julius Caesar. And this is the scene where many of the important characters come in. In Act 1, Scene 1, we had seen just Flavius and Marallus, the two senators. They are not very important senators. And we had seen some working men, a carpenter, a cobbler, and a few others. Okay. That scene, we had discussed it yesterday. You can go back and listen to those clips. That scene kind of sets the scene for the play and introduces some of the concerns in the play, of course. But this is the scene where many of the major characters, in fact, I would say all the major characters almost, except I think Octavius Caesar, I guess. Yeah, Octavius Caesar apart, everybody else makes an entry, all the important characters. So you have Caesar, Julius Caesar. Then you have Antony, okay, Mark Antony. Then you have Calpurnia, who is Caesar's wife. You have Portia, who is the wife of Brutus, who turns out to be the leader of the conspirators who kill Caesar and later fight the civil war with Antony and lose it. Okay. Then you have Decius, who is another conspirator. Cicero, okay, Cicero, these are all historical figures, of course. The way they may have been portrayed here in the play may be very different from what they actually were in history. Because Shakespeare was a playwright and he was writing for an audience. He was writing for the box office. So he took his liberties with history. But then they were important characters, like Cicero, for instance. Cicero is a great orator in the European tradition. Everybody, including John Milton and many others whom you read about in English literature, they all encountered Cicero's speeches in their teens. Okay. And he is one of the models of oratory in the Western classical world. Then, of course, Brutus, the chief of the conspirators, husband of Portia. Cassius, who organizes the whole thing, but gives the leadership to Brutus because Brutus has got a more widespread reputation for being unselfish and noble and all those things. Then Casca, another conspirator. And then you have a character who's important but who just has a couple of lines. He's a soothsayer. Soothsayer is an astrologer, basically. Somebody, I don't know whether astrologers in those days were being consulted, for fees like people do these days. But they would make these pronouncements regarding the future. And in this play, definitely the soothsayer, he says things, on his own. Nobody asks him for an opinion, but he pronounces things on his own. And he has just two lines, but they are very dramatic and important lines. So we meet him also here. So Caesar is just coming back after a victory in the civil war. Caesar was a historical character, remember? And he wrote a book in Latin about the civil war, which is one of the classics of Latin literature. It's called La Bella Civili. Okay, that is the civil war, and he had defeated Pompey, who's a rival general, and he has become the most powerful man in the Roman Empire, and he's coming in triumph, and people have turned out on the streets to welcome his victory procession. And he's a hero and he's full of himself. He's very proud. He's a very proud man because he's a remarkably successful military general. And 56 years of age, dates of Caesar, 100 BC to 44 BC. And the play is during the year of his death. So he's 56-year-old and at the peak of his life and his success. And we have a look at him. Okay. So he calls to his wife, Calpurnia. Okay. Now, there is we don't know how much documentary evidence there is for this, but Caesar was a person who divorced his wife because he suspected her of being unfaithful to him. And there was no proof. But then when somebody pointed out to him that there's no proof, what proof do you have regarding your wife's infidelity? He is supposed to have said something which became a proverb in English, Caesar's wife must be above suspicion. Okay. In modern English, this proverb means, that if you are occupying a very important position, It's not important, it's important not only to be honest and transparent, but to also appear honest and transparent. That means, in other words, you should not do anything which even makes a person suspect you of dishonesty or lack of straightforwardness or something in some way. So Caesar is supposed to have divorced Calpurnia later with the words, Caesar's wife must be above suspicion. But of course, in the play, there is no divorce. He gets killed while they are still married and fairly happily married. It's quite possible he had four wives, polygamy was very frequent in those days. It was not just wives, the Greeks and Romans, the ruling class, the patrician Romans. It was not just wives. They used to sexually use their slaves also. Even minor, underaged slaves, boys and girls used to be very freely used. It was not even considered abuse or molestation or pedophilia. Let us be very clear, if you go back into the past, uh, Western civilization within double quotes was very barbaric. Okay, child abuse and pedophilia and child sexual abuse was very commonplace. I have done a lot of work with childhood studies, so I have read this, and when I read these things way back in 2001, 2002, and so on, like it made for a harrowing experience to read these things, to know that this is the kind of world that we had. Okay. Anyway, so Caesar says Calpurnia, and immediately you have Casca. Casca is a conspirator. He was an enemy of Caesar. Okay. But Caesar, this is documented. Caesar had one quality, whether it was a stupid quality or whether it was a great quality, that depends on your perspective. He forgave his enemies. Unless they persisted in their enmity towards him, after his victory, he gave them a chance, You can stand with me or stand neutral, and I won't do anything against you. Okay, so Casca is somebody like that, but Casca hasn't let go of his bitterness against Caesar, and he turns out to be one of the active conspirators, a very cynical character. If you get any question about Casca or an opportunity to write about Casca in an essay question in your paper, cynical is a word that describes Casca. Somebody who doesn't have very much good to say about anyone, who's very sarcastic. Okay. But strangely, this is the Casca. Casca puts on a face of loyalty. So the moment Caesar calls out to his wife, there's a very noisy crowd all around. So Caesar had to call out pretty loud. And Casca says, "Peace, ho." Caesar speaks. And Calpurnia, of course, like a good Roman wife, she's very obedient. "Here, my lord." And Caesar tells her, and this is in a public space, these days it could be grounds for divorce, it would definitely be called abuse, it would make for a very bad model, horrible model of what a husband should be. But he makes a reference to to her alleged sterility, okay, her infertility, in front of the big crowd, all the tribunes, all the senators, and there is a crowd. And they are celebrating the feast of the Lupercal. And there is a belief during this festival that the person who takes part in the Lupercal chase, okay, in this scene it happens to be Mark Antony who's going to take part. That is, he takes a whip and he runs through the crowd and he whips people lightly on the way. Randomly, he whips people, not severely, lightly. And the women who are touched by that whip, women who have been trying to have children but are unable to, because in those days, all over the world, in almost all cultures, sterility was always the woman's fault. Nobody ever even considered the possibility that it could be the man's sterility or the man's lack of gametes, which led to non-reproduction, non-conception. So women who stood in the way and were touched by the whip on this day of the Lupercal, they were believed to be able to conceive children and to get rid of their sterility. So he tells Calpurnia to stand in the way of Antonius, that is Mark Antony, so that she would be touched by the whip and she would conceive. Because that was one major worry, and it is a bit of a worry for a man of 56, especially if he has ambitions of ancestor of being an emperor and so on, as some people say Caesar did have. If he doesn't have a male child in those days when male primogeniture was the norm. Okay. So that's what he tells Calpurnia. So he tells Calpurnia to stand in the way of Antony. And he tells Antony also. Antony is a very outgoing, fun loving, extrovert, forceful personality, what the Americans call a go getter. He gets things done, and he knows he's very practical. We see this side of him, chillingly, frighteningly practical, in fact, in the later part of the play. And he takes part in the chase, and Caesar knows that, if he is the one who is running with the whip, he's going to run fast. So he says, "Forget not in your speed, Antonius, to touch Calpurnia. For our elders say, the baron touched in this holy chase shake off their sterile curse." And Antony is a pakka politician. He wants power, but he knows that when Caesar is around, he's not going to be number one. And so he tries his best to be number two. So he tells Caesar, "I shall remember." And then he says, when Caesar says, "Do this," it is performed. Okay. Your wish is my command, kind of thing. Then Caesar, has a very imperious tone, not a rude or arrogant tone, but imperious. Imperious is an interesting word in English. That is, it is not rudeness, it is not arrogance, but I don't know whether you have seen this in certain people. The way they tell you to do things, it's as if they uh, they have absolutely no doubt that it will be done. They don't request, they don't plead, they don't do anything of that sort. They just feel that they need to pronounce their need and it will be done. And they can't imagine the possibility of somebody saying no to them. That possibility, that particular scenario just doesn't exist in their mind, in their imagination. Okay. I had a friend like that in Hyderabad University. He was very imperious, and once or twice I have had to tell him, "I'm sorry, I have other things to do. I can't do this." And he was like very surprised. He was not angry or anything like that, not offended, but totally surprised. It was like he didn't know what hit him. His eyes went wide and all that. And I had to repeat 2-3 times that, "Look, I have other things to do at such and such time. I can't do this." And then he like nodded quietly and went away, and he took time to digest the whole thing. So you have people like that. Caesar is an imperious character. So he says, "Set on and leave no ceremony out." And at this point, the soothsayer, he's an old man, and some productions of Julius Caesar have projected him as a blind man. In Greek and Roman mythology, there is this obsession with somebody, if they don't have first sight, that is, if they don't have the physical sight of their eyes, they are supposed to have second sight, that is a sixth sense, the ability to predict certain things in the future, at least once in a way. And the soothsayer is this kind of figure, and he calls to Caesar, and Caesar says, "Ha, who calls?" And Casca is immediately, "Bid every noise be still, peace yet again." And then Caesar says, Who is it in the press that calls on me?" Press here means crowd. Okay. "Who is it in the press that calls on me? I hear a tongue shriller than all the music. Cry, Caesar. Speak." Caesar is turned to hear. Okay. I don't know whether this is the case in Latin or this was the case with Caesar or in Rome, but in English, it's only people occupying a very high position who refer to themselves in first person plural or in third person. And Shakespeare was writing this play for the English, and Caesar is referring to himself in third person. Okay. Caesar is turned to here. Not I am turned to here, mind you, but Caesar is turned to here. And the soothsayer pronounces, this is one of the soothsayer's lines, very famous line. Okay. One of the immortal Shakespearean lines. Beware the Ides of March. Okay, the Ides refer to the halfway point in a month. You know, in the case of March, it would be sometime on the 15th of March. Beware the Ides of March. Okay. And Caesar is very contemptuous of this, you know. Uh, Caesar says, what man is that? Okay, in a strange way. And Brutus says, a soothsayer bids you beware the Ides of March. Then Caesar says, set him before me. Let me see his face. Again, the imperious Caesar. And Cassius, fellow, come from the throng, look upon Caesar. And Caesar says, what sayest thou to me now? Speak once again. And the soothsayer, you know, he is in a different world. He is not ruffled by worldly power. And he says, beware the Ides of March. And Caesar dismisses him. You know, ഇത് പുച്ഛം പോലുമല്ല, ഒരു അലക്ഷ്യത്തോടോ ഇതിനൊക്കെ നമ്മൾ ശ്രദ്ധിക്കേണ്ട കാര്യമില്ലല്ലോ, ഇങ്ങനെ നിസാരവൽക്കരിച്ച് കളയുന്നു എന്ന് പറയില്ലേ. ഹീ ഈസ് എ ഡ്രീമർ, let him pass. Okay, he's a dreamer. Let us leave him pass. Okay. Then, yeah, I guess we'll need to get moving faster from tomorrow. But then, because it's the beginning of the play, I'm being compelled to give a little more background and stuff, then will be necessary further down the play. Okay, thank you.